Hey everybody, Andy Dautrich with Centennial Lending Group, back here again with 5 minutes. Good friend of mine, Nick Capitano, that I met through a mutual friend. And Nick is the owner of Nick Capitano Law Offices. And Nick, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would say you specialize in family law, divorce, and things of that nature. Is that fair?
That's correct. And it's great to be here, Andy. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You know, we met through the networking group that we put together, and it's just that small, intimate group of people who are mutually interested in everybody's success. And you and I had met the other day for lunch, and I said, "Hey, why don't I put you on Facebook? We do these short little videos that people seem to watch." And so I thought I'd pick your brain on divorce, if that's okay.
Absolutely, I'm looking forward to it.
So, you know, going through divorce myself, which is never an easy thing to do, you start to realize that once you're through the process, there's a lot of things that you wish you would have known or things you would have asked right up front. And one of the things that you said to me at lunch that I thought maybe you could address real quick, because it seems to be taboo, especially for first marriages, is we talked about prenuptial agreements and how they might be important. Just explain real quickly in a nutshell why prenuptials might be important to newlyweds, even though they might be completely happy.
Yeah. So great question. And I've always looked at prenuptial agreements like this. While you are in that honeymoon stage where you're both loving each other, you're really excited about your new marriage, you're all on board with working as a team, a prenuptial agreement is really a set of instructions. It's the guide that you're going to use if you ever do decide to divorce down the line. You think about how you want to divorce while you're still getting along. You kind of outline those terms of that agreement. So let's fast forward 5 years. You and your spouse have decided you're no longer wanting to stay in the marriage. Well, luckily enough, you entered into a prenup prior to your marriage, and your prenup has already outlined who's going to get what assets from the marriage. It's protected both of your individual assets that you came into the marriage with. Maybe you have a 401k that you have that has been appreciating over your marriage. You and your wife or your husband, your spouse have already agreed that what is yours is going to stay yours, what is mine is going to stay mine. And it kind of removes a lot of that anxiety that you will face having to go through the legal process when you decide to divorce, because you've already decided when you were happily together how you wanted to handle it.
Right.
So I'm of the position that if you have entered into a prenup prior to your marriage, it's going to help you to maintain good relations while going through the divorce process, rather than having to fight out who gets the house or who gets the 401k or the savings or whatnot. So I think they're a really undervalued and underused asset. I mean, getting married, it's one of the most legally impactful things you can do where there's no disclosure at the foresight of it.
Right.
You take out a mortgage, you go through a plethora of disclosure. You get married, no one tells you what the legal ramifications are. So,
and I would imagine your challenge as an attorney is that you're looking at this prenuptial as a very intelligent and intellectual step towards keeping everything mutually agreeable throughout the marriage, where people that you would suggest that to might take offense to that as you implying that their marriage isn't going to last.
Yeah, I think there's still a huge stigma behind the idea of divorcing. I mean, we're in 2020 now. I think society has become more accepting of divorce. I think people realize if you're no longer happy with the person that you are with, that it's okay not to continue being with them.
Right.
But there's definitely a big stigma behind it. And I agree. I think a lot of people think, oh, no, you think our marriage is not going to work. And it has nothing to do with that. I mean, just like going to a financial planner to figure out how you're going to save for your kids' college or save for your retirement, I think a prenup is just good planning. And when you look at it that way and you take out the emotion of what a prenup is meant to handle, I think more and more people realize that it's a smart legal tool that they can use to help keep things amicable between both you and your spouse.
And you could probably assimilate that to a conversation that I had with Andy George a couple weeks back when we talked about wills, where most people that don't put a will together either aren't anticipating what could happen down the road, or they're in denial about their own death, when really by putting that document in place, you're making your life easier and everybody else's life easier down the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, any big event, there's going to be natural emotion involved. So anything you can pre-plan for and help reduce that anxiety later down the line, I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm glad we touched on that, because again, I feel like divorce and prenuptial agreements have always been two of those topics that people don't necessarily want to talk about. Oh, it'll never happen to me. You know, we're happily married. But again, you know, I've always said nobody ever gets married with the intentions of getting divorced, but it does happen. And
It does.
when there's no rules in advance as to, okay, what's going to happen when we fight, it's almost like a free-for-all between the attorneys and the parties involved. So as a follow-up and as a last question to you, I would ask you, is there any advice that you might be able to give in general terms to people who are considering or might be in the process of a divorce as to how they might be able to do this as smoothly as possible? Take out the kids, take out the assets, take out everything, and just break it down to the concept of we are now separating our lives. What could you say to make the process as simple as possible for them?
Sure. So one thing I like to tell all my clients at the onset of a consultation on divorce is the divorce process, it can be very simple, straightforward, and affordable, or it can be very complex, drawn out, and expensive. And really the determining factor as to how your experience is going to play out is whether or not you and your spouse are getting along amicably. Now, obviously, you're at the point of divorce, so there's some tension between you two. But like what you just alluded to, if you get to the point where you realize, all right, this relationship is going to be wrapped up here, and we want to keep things as amicable as possible moving forward, sit down at the dinner table and have a conversation with your spouse about the process. If you're both on board with divorcing, then you've already significantly reduce the amount of stress that can be involved with the divorce process, because no one's going to be surprised when they get paperwork in the mail from the other spouse. So having just an adult conversation and really getting down to the nitty-gritty. These are the assets we have. This is what we have to figure out how to divide amongst ourselves. Let's figure it out and make this as smooth of a process as possible. And as long as no one's vindictive against one another and you really just go forward as a team the best you can, that's going to result in the smoothest divorce process as possible. Now, easier said than done. It doesn't always work out that way, but I think that's where counsel really comes in. Having a good attorney to help you think through all the different dynamics that can occur in your divorce, in my opinion, can significantly help divorcing couples move forward successfully and affordably, which is nowadays, I know one of the biggest concerns of a lot of my clients that come through my door.
Right. And that prenup is huge too, right?
It's certainly going to help make things a lot easier in the future if you've had that conversation with your spouse prior to marriage. So I'm always a fan of them, and I do encourage people to at least, even if you don't want to enter into a prenup, maybe take you and your spouse, go talk to a family law attorney just to have an idea of what you two could consider. Even if it's not about a prenup, maybe a will, maybe setting up a trust for children if you have children, or even a succession plan for a business or any other assets that you might have.
Great. Hey, last question. I normally try to make this something funky and random, but in your case, I think you give good advice, and there might be people out there that would be interested in chatting, and they want to do things confidentially. What's the best way for someone to get a hold of you if they needed to reach you?
Sure. So my office line is 610-228-2828. You call that line, and 99% of the time you're going to get me picking up on the other side. You could also visit me on my website at thelegisgroup.com. That is THELEGES group.com. All my contact information is listed on my website. Or you could even just go to Google, type in my name, Nikolas Capitano, and I'll come up on the first page.
Nick, you're the man. I appreciate it. I know we set this up and I wasn't quite sure what to talk about. And then I thought, you know what, why wouldn't we just address the elephant in the room? Divorce and prenups are really hard to, for most people to discuss, especially in the middle of a divorce or thinking about getting married. But I think you gave great advice. And anybody that's looking to talk to a straight shooter and an honest guy should reach out to Nick. I appreciate your time, Nick. And I'll put this on Facebook so your two clients can see you. And hopefully we have another two out of this in the next day or two.
I appreciate it, Andy. Thanks so much. It was great chatting with you, and I look forward to catching up soon.
Thanks, Nick. Take care.
You too. Take care. Bye.